Coming up next, we've got a presentation on the Maori perspective on patient deterioration. And to start that presentation, I'd like to introduce Graham Cameron, who is Pōtikanga, sorry, pronounced that really badly, Pōtikanga for Bay of Plenty DHB. Thank you.
No reira he kara kia no. Tēnei te ara ki arangi nui, tēnei te ara ki a papatua nuku. Tēnei te ara ki arangi rao ko papa nārau nā tapu wai o tāne mahuta ki raro. No reira haere ta pō ko tēnei te ata, whanau hara mai te toki, haumie hui e, tai kiri e. Tūtapa te kawa nui o i o matua nui ki te whare pukenga o re hua a riki te whare tapu o i o tapa tū. Ko te Māori, ko te mana, ko te tapu tike ana atu anō, te ihi nuku no, te ihi rangi kia eke ki runga i te ahurewa tapu o i o e. Te kawa nui o i o matua nui ki te whare pukenga o re ariki te whare tapu o i o tapa tū. Ko te Māori, ko te mana, ko te tapu tike ana atu anō, te ihi nuku no, te ihi rangi kia eke ki runga i te ahurewa tapu o i o e. Te tipua. Mai e te tawhito, mai e te kāhui o nā ariki, mai e tā whiwhi atu kia rongo. Kia ora Tata.
Yeah.
I te tuatahi, ko te mihi kia koe arona i whakatūwhiri tō tātou wānanga i te whakamoimi, te whakawhetai ki o mātou atua, i manaki mai, i tiaki mai a mātou nā reira tēnā koe. Tēnā koe te katoa. My colleague Marama is holding a lovely old picture. This is 1923. It is the Mori Health Council that covers the Bay of Plenty. And the Minister of Health has joined them for the photo, and the Minister of Health in 1923 was Sir Maui Pōmari. Sir Maui Pōmari was born in Urenui, so he uri o Taranaki tira, and first entered Parliament in 1911 under the encouragement and support of the second Māori king. The Māori councils were established by Te Rangihiroa, or Sir Peter Buck, and they were established for the understanding and betterment of the Maori race. I say Maori because that's probably how they said it then. And there were 12 of them in the North Island. What stands out about the Māori Health Councils is that 40 years before this photo was taken, the entirety of tauranga moana was confiscated by the Crown. In 1875, the year that Sir Maui Pōmari was born, that confiscation was completed. The last payment was made to us as tangata whenua. Then, barely a decade before this photo was taken, Te Puia, the niece of the Māori king, led a campaign of non-violent resistance to the forced conscription of Tainui men into the Māori battalion to go to World War I. And barely 5 years before this photo was taken, the last shot of the New Zealand Wars was fired at Maunga Pohatu when 900 police invaded the village of Maunga Pohatu to arrest Ruakinana, the Māori prophet of Tūhoi, and in doing so shot his son. And what's notable about that is that none of that was considered useful in the understanding and betterment of the Māori race. Māori poverty, Māori health, Māori education, and the deficits that were apparent even then in the 1920s were without historical connection, were without story, were removed from any of the experience of what those people had gone through within the lifetime of the men who sit in this photo. What's also notable, of course, if you get up and close and have a look, is there's only one Māori guy in there, and that's the Minister of Māori Health, so Maui Pōmari. So the Māori Health Council constitutes, I think it's about 12 Pākehā men for the Bay of Plenty, who are making all the decisions around all aspects of health for Māori people. So my question to you, to us all at this conference, is over the last day and a half, I've sat through a few presentations on a variety of different kaupapa, and we've done our damnedest to remove the people we're talking about from their story. We started with the story yesterday, but the story hasn't continued throughout the day and a half. We've gone back to what's easy for us, which is percentages, which is facts, and which is numbers. But none of those matter to the whanau who come into our hospital. What matters is that person who is deteriorating, that person who has a chronic illness, that person who has lifelong disability as a result of deterioration, or that person who dies. The percentages and numbers are irrelevant to them. What's relevant to them is their story. And I wonder if we have moved far from 1923, just under a century ago, in terms of our approach, particularly to health for our Indigenous people, but for groups that we don't easily understand or don't easily connect with. E nā reira, wena te mihi kia koutou. To start, my name is Graham Bidwar Cameron. I am the Pou Tikanga for the Bay of Plenty District Health Board, and my colleagues who are with us, first and foremost, Tricia Keelan, our General Manager for Māori Health Gains and Development, Marama Tauranga, ironically not from Tauranga, but from Taranaki, and Keiwin McKenzie, who is Ngāti Pākehā, Mari Tata from Ngai Tamarawaho of Ngāti Ranginui. Tricia is from Ngāti Kahununu, Ngāti Parau, and Rongo Whakata, and Te Ao Pauri. Let's not forget them. Definitely not forget them. And Arona Smith, Ngāti Pūkeko, and Ngāti Awa, and I am from Pirirākau and Ngāti Ranginui. And we all contribute to Māori Health in our District Health Board. So at different times throughout this next hour, different members are going to speak. But first and foremost, just by way of explanation, we're inviting you to enter into this as a wānanga. What that means is you don't have to sit in your seats and stare at us. So if you prefer to sit on the ground, if you want to take your chair elsewhere, if you want to do anything like that, you're most welcome to. What we're going to do is we're going to tell you a story, and we're going to tell you it 4 times. And it is the story of Marama's boy and his experience in hospital in relation to the kaupapa for which we are here. And as we're telling this story, we're going to unveil different aspects of that story. So to do so, we're actually going to ask you to close your eyes. So you may want to put your wallet where I can't reach them. And as you close your eyes, we just want you to concentrate on Marama's voice. So we're going to bring some chairs up because we're not going to stand here for an hour, and then I'm going to hand over to Marama. Nā reira. If you could all please make yourself comfortable and close your eyes as we enter into our wānanga. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Okay, so at 6 p.m. on the 2nd of January 2002, Tai entered the world in Grasse, France. He was 6 weeks early. As a baby, he was rocked to sleep in a 170-year-old wine barrow, which had been made into a bassinet, while a Saint Bernard sat guard and watched his every move, believing him to be her baby. Tai moved to New Zealand when he was 18 months old. His first language was French. His parents were educated professionals returning to Aotearoa, where his mother was born. Tai grew to be a tall, strong teenager in a loving environment, in regular contact with his grandparents and wider whānau. He attended school, was fully immunised, and well liked by his peers throughout primary, intermediate and high school. On Friday night, at the age of 15 years old, Tai and his two friends decided to go out for a pizza and then to have a sleepover to watch movies. He didn't feel himself that night. He had a rumbly tummy. He woke up in the night feeling sick, like he wanted to vomit. Tai did vomit an hour later, and then he went back to bed still feeling yucky. When Tai woke the next morning, he had pain under his belly button and he couldn't stand straight. He felt hot. He went to his mum to tell her how bad he felt. He explained to her that he had vomited, and she felt his forehead to see if he was still hot. Was it the pizza? Mum put Tai back to bed and gave him some Panadol, which he vomited up almost immediately. She watched him for an hour to see if things would resolve. Tai's mum had a hunch things were not right. He was grey around the gills, his funny walk, his vomiting worried her, as did his pain, so she decided he needed to see a doctor. Her first thought was to take him to a medical centre, and as she was getting him into the car, everything in her being said, "Take him to ED. It's his appendix." Tai entered ED and was greeted by the triage nurse, who smiled at Tai and his mum as they entered the assessment room. Very quickly, they moved to a cubicle in the ED, where another nurse introduced herself and told them what her plan was, and brought Tai some comfort with pain relief, and also took tests in preparation for the doctor's assessment. Shortly after the nurse had finished her task, the ED registrar came into the room, acknowledging him and his mum. The interaction between the ED doctor and Tai was warm and respectful in every action and every word. She afforded him the right to express what he was going through. The doctor sought his permission and Mum's permission to fully examine Tai. The doctor included Mum in these discussions, taking into consideration her concerns. Mum knew what the plan was and felt happy that Tai was in safe hands. Even though the wait in ED felt long, there were regular updates from staff about the reasons for the delay. They took his observations frequently. Mum could see Tai was getting pain relief, and she kept Tai occupied whilst they waited for the surgical registrar. A number of hours later, the surgical doctor arrived, rushed into Tai's cubicle and pronounced, "Ate a bad pizza, eh? Don't worry, we'll get you home soon." Mum was a little shocked. Had he not talked to the ED registrar? Even more shocked when he left the room without examining Tai or telling her what the results of all the tests had been. Mum ran after the surgical registrar, asked him to come back to the room and examine her boy, asked him what the results were and why he thought Tai had food poisoning and not an appendix like the other doctor. Mum took internal deep breaths at this time while she was watching the doctor's eyes roll back in his head and his body language and his arms move up to his hips. She knew she had to advocate for Tai, and she knew it was a bad idea to go home, and she knew in her heart of hearts that Tai's appendix had to come out. The surgical doctor made her feel like she was unreasonable with her request for more information, for the logic and the science behind his thinking. She couldn't override the voice in her head that said, "If you leave this hospital, only bad will come of it." Reluctantly, the surgical doctor did go back and examine Ty's tummy, and he agreed to admit Ty overnight with probable gastro and exclude appendix, telling Mum that, he would end up going home the next morning. Ty and his mum waited in ED a few more hours before they were sent to the paediatric ward. The pain in Ty's belly got worse over the next 12 hours, despite vigilant attention from the paediatric nurses with IV analgesia. The nurses were constantly advocating for Ty to be reviewed by the surgical team over this time. Ty developed peritonitis. He cried like a cat that had been run over. The morphine boluses were not holding his pain. And he was exhausted. Mum got scared because she saw the nurses were worried and were constantly escalating to the team without a result. Why weren't the team listening? Why couldn't another doctor take out Ty's appendix? They saw the surgical doctor from ED during the time he informed them that there were critical cases in OT, and that's why they were waiting. Mum expressed Ty was deteriorating, that the pain, his colour and his spirit scared her. She pointed out his pulse was racing when she felt for it. She pointed out the monitor measuring the blood pressure and the pulse kept alarming. Surely this was not a good sign. Ty received his operation at 6 p.m. that evening, 19 hours after presenting to ED, with many of those hours spent escalating his deterioration. In OT, Ty had pus flushed out of his belly. He returned to the ward with drains and drips on antibiotics and pain medicine. He did not want his mother to leave him. He felt scared and couldn't understand why no one had listened to his mum or the nurses. Ty's mum remained in hospital with him for 10 days, where she helped attend to his needs, allay his fears in the middle of the night, and watched him struggle with pain for the first 4 to 5 days of that stay. His pain was only eased every morning when Mori Health came to give him karakia and to sing waiata to help his healing.
So there's not been a power cut. When our tupuna, our ancestors used to learn, it would normally have been at night. You would face away from the teacher and the teacher would chant. And then as the student you would repeat, and if you made a mistake the teacher would chant again and then you would repeat. So our wānanga enters into that space. So you're welcome to shuffle around, open your eyes, but no kia wahangu, no speaking at this stage. So Marama is going to read the story a second time. And as she's reading the story, I want you to find the phrase or the word that stands out for you in that story. Kia ora koutou.
At 6 p.m. on the 2nd of January 2002, Ty entered the world in Grasse, France. He was 6 weeks early. As a baby, he was rocked to sleep in a 170-year-old wine barrel, which had been made for him into a bassinet, whilst a Saint Bernard sat guard and watched his every move, believing him to be her baby. Ty moved to New Zealand when he was 18 months old. His first language was French. His parents were educated professionals returning to Aotearoa, where his mother was born. Ty grew to be a tall, strong teenager in a loving environment, regular contact with grandparents and wider whānau. He attended school, was fully immunised and well liked by his peers throughout primary, intermediate and high school. One Friday night at the age of 15, Ty and his 2 friends decided to go out for a pizza, and then they had a sleepover to watch movies. He didn't feel himself. He had a rumbly tummy and woke up in the middle of the night feeling sick, like he wanted to vomit. Ty did vomit an hour later, and then he went back to bed, still feeling yucky. When Ty woke the next morning, he had pain under his belly button. He couldn't stand straight and he felt hot. He went to his mum to tell her how bad he felt. He explained to her that he had vomited, and she felt his forehead to see if he was still hot. Was it the pizza? Mum put Tai back to bed and gave him some Panadol, which he vomited up almost immediately. She watched him for an hour to see if things would resolve. Tai's mum had a hunch things were not right. He was grey around the gills, his funny walk, his vomiting worried her, as did his pain. She decided he needed to see a doctor. Her first thought was to take him to a medical centre. As she was getting him in the car, everything in her being shouted, "Take him to the ED, it's his appendix." Tai entered ED and was greeted by a triage nurse who smiled at Tai and his mum as they entered the assessment room. Very quickly they were moved to a cubicle in the ED where another nurse introduced herself, told them what her plan was about, and decided to give Tai some comfort by analgesia, to take some blood tests in preparation for the doctor's assessment. Shortly after the nurse had finished her task, the ED registrar came into Tai's room, acknowledging him and his mother. The interaction between the ED doctor and Tai was warm and respectful, every action and every word affording him the right to express what he was going through. The doctor sought permission to fully examine Tai. The doctor included Mum in these discussions, taking into consideration her concerns. Mum knew what the plan was and felt happy that Tai was in safe hands. Even though the ED wait was long, there were regular updates from staff about the reasons for the delay, and they took his observations frequently. Mum could see Tai was getting pain relief, and she kept Tai occupied whilst they waited for the surgical registrar. A number of hours later, the surgical doctor arrived, rushed into Tai's cubicle and pronounced, "Ate a bad pizza, eh? Don't worry, we'll get you home soon." Mum was a little shocked. Had he not talked to the ED registrar? Even more shocked when he left the room without examining Tai or telling her what the results of all the tests had been. Mum ran into, after the surgical registrar, asked him to come back to the room and examine her boy, asked him what the results were and why he thought Tai had food poisoning and not appendix like the other doctor. Mum took internal deep breaths as she was advocating for Tai. She knew it was a bad idea to go home. She knew in her heart of hearts that Tai's appendix had to come out. The surgical doctor made her feel like she was being unreasonable with her requests for more information, for the logic and the science behind his thinking. She couldn't override the voice in her head that said, "If you leave this hospital, only bad will come of it." Reluctantly, the surgical doctor did go back and examine Tai's tummy, and he agreed to admit Tai overnight with probable gastro and to exclude appendix. Tai and his mum waited in the ED for a few more hours before they were sent to the paediatric ward. The pain in Tai's belly got worse over the next 12 hours despite vigilant attention from paediatric nurses with IV analgesia. The nurses were constantly advocating for Tai to be reviewed by the surgical team. Over this time, Tai developed peritonitis. His cries were like a cat had been run over. The morphine boluses were not holding his pain, and he was exhausted. Mum got scared because she saw the nurses were worried and constantly escalating to the team without a result. Why weren't the team listening? Why couldn't another doctor take out Tai's appendix? They saw the surgical doctor from the ED during this time. He informed them that there were critical cases in theatre, and that is why they were waiting. Mum expressed Tai was deteriorating, that the pain, his colour and his spirit scared her. She pointed out his pulse was racing when she felt for it. She pointed out that the monitor measuring his blood pressure and his pulse kept alarming. Surely this was not a good sign. Tai received his operation at 6 p.m. that evening, 19 hours after presenting to ED, with many of those hours spent escalating his deterioration. In OT, Tai has pus flushed out of his belly. He returned to the ward with drains and drips on antibiotics and pain medicine. He did not want his mother to leave him. He felt scared and couldn't understand why no one had listened to his mum or the nurses. Tai's mum remained in hospital with him for 10 days, where she helped tend to his needs, allay his fears in the middle of the night, and watched him struggle with pain for a number of days, which eased every morning when Mori Health came to give him karakia and waiata to help his healing.
Kia ora, you can open your eyes. I'd like you to talk to the people next to you. What was the word or the phrase that stood out for you? Papaki tua na ngā tai ki mauau, I whā neke hia, I whā nuku hia. Kia whiua rere hia wahine roa ki te wai, ki tai wiwi, ki tai wawa. You should always learn a tauparapara to bring people back to attention. It works really well. So we're going to now read the story. We're going to have the story a third time. So again, I would like you to close your eyes and enter into this space. But this time I want you to identify one of the people in the story and try and identify what this was like from their perspective. So you're identifying yourself with someone in the story, and then you are trying to understand their perspective on what went on. So if you could please close your eyes. Kia ora koutou.
At 6 p.m. on the 2nd of January 2002, Tai entered the world in Grasse, France. He was 6 weeks early. As a baby, he was rocked to sleep in a 170-year-old wine barrel which had been made into a bassinet for him, whilst a Saint Bernard sat guard and watched his every move, believing him to be her baby. Tai moved to New Zealand when he was 18 months old. His first language was French. His parents were educated professionals returning to Aotearoa, where his mother was born. Tai grew up to be a tall, strong teenager in a loving environment, with regular contact with his grandparents and wider whānau. He attended school, was fully immunised and well liked by his peers throughout primary, intermediate and high school. On Friday night at the age of 15, Tai and his two friends decided to go out for pizza and then have a sleepover to watch movies. He didn't feel himself. He had a rumbly tummy and woke up in the night feeling sick, like he wanted to vomit. Tai did vomit an hour later, and then he went back to bed, still feeling yucky. When Tai woke the next morning, he had pain under his belly button. He couldn't stand straight, and he felt hot. He went to his mum to tell her how bad he felt. He explained to her that he had vomited, and she felt his forehead to see if he was still hot. Was it the pizza? Mum put Tai back to bed and gave him some Panadol, which he vomited up almost immediately. She watched him for an hour to see if things would resolve. Tai's mum had a hunch things were not right. He was grey around the gills, his funny walk, his vomiting worried her, as did his pain. She decided he needed to see a doctor. Her first thought was to take him to a medical centre. As she was getting him into the car, everything in her being shouted, "Take him to the ED, it's his appendix." Tai entered ED and was greeted by the triage nurse, who smiled at Tai and his mum as they entered the assessment room. Very quickly they were moved into a cubicle in the ED where another nurse introduced herself, told them what her plan was, brought Tai comfort with analgesia, took some blood tests in preparation for the doctor's assessment. Shortly after the nurse had finished her task, the ED registrar came into the room, acknowledging him and his mum. The interaction between the ED doctor and Tai was warm and respectful, every action and every word affording him the right to express what he was going through. The doctor sought permission to fully examine Tai and his mum. The doctor included Mum in these discussions, taking into consideration her concerns. Mum knew what the plan was and felt happy that Tai was in safe hands. Even though the wait in ED felt long, there were regular updates from staff about the reasons for the delay. They took his observations frequently. Mum could see Tai was getting pain relief, and she kept Tai occupied whilst they waited for the surgical registrar. A number of hours later, the surgical doctor arrived, rushed into Tai's cubicle and pronounced, "Ate a bad pizza, eh? Don't worry, we'll get you home soon." Mum was a little shocked. Had he not talked to the ED registrar? Even more shocked when he left the room without examining Tai or telling her what the result of all the tests had been. Mum ran after the surgical registrar, asked him to come back to the room and examine her boy. Asked him what the results were and why he thought Tai had food poisoning and not an appendix like the other doctor. Mum took internal deep breaths as she was advocating for Tai. She knew it was a bad idea to go home. She knew in her heart of hearts that Tai's appendix had to come out. The surgical doctor made her feel like she was being unreasonable with her request for more information, for logic, for the science behind his thinking. She couldn't override the voice in her head that said, if you leave this hospital, only bad can come of it. Reluctantly, the surgical doctor did go back and examine Ty's tummy, and he agreed to admit Ty overnight with probable gastro, excluding appendix. Ty and his mum waited in ED for a few more hours before they were sent to the paediatric ward. The pain in Ty's belly got worse over the next 12 hours, despite vigilant attention from the paediatric nurses with IV analgesia. The nurses were constantly advocating for Ty to be reviewed by the surgical team over this time. Ty developed peritonitis. He cried like a cat that had been run over. The morphine boluses were not holding his pain, and he was exhausted. Mum got scared because she saw the nurses were worried and constantly escalating to the team without a result. Why weren't the team listening? Why couldn't another doctor take out Ty's appendix? They saw the surgical doctor from the ED during this time, and he informed them there were critical cases in OT, and that is why they were waiting. Mum expressed to Ty that Ty was deteriorating to the doctor, that the pain, his colour and his spirit scared her. She pointed out his pulse was racing. When she felt for it, she pointed out the monitor measuring his blood pressure and his pulse kept alarming. Surely this was not a good sign. Ty received his operation at 6 p.m. in the evening, 19 hours after presenting to ED, with many of those hours spent escalating his deterioration. In the OT, Ty had pus flushed out of his belly. He returned to the ward with multiple drains and drips on antibiotics and pain medicine. He did not want his mother to leave him. He felt scared and couldn't understand why no one would listen to his mum or the nurses. Ty's mum remained in hospital with him for 10 days, where she helped tend to his needs, allay his fears in the middle of the night, and watched him struggle with pain for the first part of that stay, which was eased every morning when Mori Health came to give him karakia and sing waiata to help with his healing.
Could we have a little bit more light? Not full light, because people like, Kia ora, wonderful. Now I would like you to talk to the people around you. Who did you identify with? And in doing so, what were the reflections that you had on the story? Kia ora. Piki mai kake mai rā ho mai te wai ora. Kia hau e tūtehu ana koe o te moi o te kuia i te pō, i raru ai a wairaka. Papaki tuana ngā tai ki te reina, ka pō, ka ao, ka awatia tihea I Maori ora. Now, can we have a little bit more light? Our eyes are slowly adjusting back to. Thank you very much. You all look a lot browner in the dark, just want you to know that. So you've just spent 25 minutes listening to someone's story. And of course you'll go, well, you know, you're at a conference, so you've got the time. But this is my experience over the last 43 years, is that's all people actually want. So they want you to hear their story. And they're willing to put up with the trainee through to the expert. They're willing to put up with the volunteer through to the professional, as long as a person will listen to their story. So kōna te mihi kia koutou. An acknowledgement of you all for listening to the story. I'm now going to ask Kaiwan up, and we'll for the next part of our presentation. Tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koutou katoa, hard act to follow. So I'm really privileged to work in the arena of Mori Health. And interestingly, when you work for Mori Health, you find yourself immersed in all things te ao Māori. I've come to learn that you can't improve Mori Health without appreciating and respecting te ao Māori in its entirety, and without having a profound effect on your life as a whole. So I'm going to tell you some stories, because that's the Māori way. And so I was recently on an interview panel, and I was representing Mori Health Services from an operational viewpoint, and I had my partner in crime from Te Pou Kōkiri giving a tikanga assessment on the interview, and a young Pākehā man came in. And when I introduced myself and who I worked for, this young man physically recoiled, and he looked surprised at me being there. For a split second, he gave me a sense that I actually didn't have a right to be in that space, that I didn't have a right to label myself as my work being in Te Ao Māori. But you know, I do have the right, and I'm actually really privileged to work in a service that's actually teaching me to uphold te tiriti o Waitangi and the true meaning of participation, protection and partnership. So in this space, I'm doing my bit to break down walls and to dispel myths that exist in white spaces and systems that we have in healthcare. So I've learned to pay attention to daily exchanges that occur in Māori health and to reflect on those feelings that arise as well as break down circumstances. I recall a time when I worked in the emergency department. My history is 30 years in acute care setting and intensive care and emergency department. And a middle-aged Māori man came into the ED one evening. He was extremely ill and thought I'd be a little brave, and I greeted him with a kei te pehikoe. He answered me with a word that I hadn't heard before, and I went, oh, that's good. My greatest fear was realised that if I used te reo Māori, then someone was going to answer me back in te reo Māori. And I wouldn't understand it, and I didn't. He looked at me with a puzzled look on his face, and I busied myself with the tasks that are required in a resuscitation room. And as you all, if anyone's worked in ED, or you know there's much to busy yourself with. And then he spoke to me in English, and he said, well, isn't that why I'm here? And I realised that he had actually answered my question with how he was actually feeling. Amazing. But when he answered me in Māori, I stopped listening with my ears and my eyes and my heart, because I feared I wouldn't comprehend what the response was. And I think this happens a lot in health. We retreat from genuine exchanges out of fear of the unknown instead of applying manaakitanga, following tikanga and practising whakawhanaungatanga for patients' safety and quality care. So I really wish I'd understood the model by which I did my nurses training under, and that was te wheki, the model of the octopus. So all the tentacles represent the dimensions that influence waiora. And I wish I'd applied the principles of frameworks and models such as Mason Dury's Te Whare Tapawhā, more recently He Po Oranga Tangata Whenua, and Ngā Pomana o Eo. A learned wahine I listened to recently said that Māori themselves don't need frameworks and models because it's inherently who they are. But non-Māori do. We need it to guide us in the absence of actually having Māori physically walking alongside us in our practice. So this is how I see it. I want to paint a picture. This is a painting by an artist called Adele Soster. So this is a body of water, and I call it Lake Te Ao Māori. And on its shores sits a proud po hutakawa tree. So it's the kind of tree you look at and you want to climb into it no matter how old you are. And I think if you're a Kiwi, we've all climbed into one of these trees and, played in it and sat in it. And so you take yourself out onto that low branch and you take a little dive out into the water, and you know the feeling when you hit the water. It's a little cold at first and kind of takes your breath away, but as you adjust there's a sense of weightlessness, and if you're really brave you'll just be really still under the water, and it takes away the clutter and it takes away the noise of the world around you. So you get out, you feel a little brave, and you go up to the next branch and you dive out a little higher and a little bit deeper, and you're still feeling that tautoko from the water. And so on and so on. So for me, this pohutakawa tree represents frameworks and models that support me as Pākehā or non-Māori to move in this world. And it's a platform for me to leap into the world of Te Ao Māori. Te Awa, or body of water, is all things Te Ao Māori, and it's connected to the land and the air as much as the land and the air is connected to it. So I started off in these really low branches, and believe me, I had a winter wetsuit on, I'd floaties, and I didn't so much as swan dive, but I kind of lowered myself into the water, stuck a toe in, once or twice before I immersed myself in still holding on to that branch till the very last moment. But I did let go. I took a deep breath and I went under, and it felt pretty good. So I tried a little te reo. I lip-synced a waiata, and frankly I'm still lip-syncing, because as much as I thought I was a good singer in mainstream, I've been made excruciatingly aware that I'm not as good as I think I am. For me, the waters of Lake Te Ao Māori support me and refresh me, and every day my colleagues support me and they correct my te reo. And every day I learn a little bit more about this world, and every day I'm a little bit more wise about the world as a whole. I have a ways to climb in this tree, but it isn't a chore. And I aspire to the day that I swan dive off that top branch. And beyond that, I actually aspire to the day where the tree or that platform is so much a part of my practice that I can go sprinting from the shores of the lake and straight into the water without having to climb in there, but always knowing that I have that proud Pouhutakawa tree just there in the background. So I became involved in the Kōrero Mai project in July of this year, and it was the frameworks and models that kind of supported me as Pākehā to drive and facilitate this. It was probably the first big challenge I'd had as a Pākehā working in Mori Health, and it struck me that if the Commission was wanting a true kaupapa perspective, then the questions needed to be modified. So that's when I took a leap out of that tree. I modified the questions so that when all was said and done, the answers that we'd extract would be truly, purely Māori. But I also had to be mindful of keeping core elements intact in those questions and that they aligned with what had been applied to other data collections throughout the country. So I modified the questions and I took them to my pōtikanga and to my colleagues, and then sent them back to the Commission for further approval. So I wasn't too far off track, which was quite reassuring. For me, I felt that it couldn't be me who sat with whanau and family and patients. For me, I personally felt that I had to be Māori to Māori to get a trueness and a cleanness there. So the answers to these questions were really central to extracting themes. So I'm looking forward to seeing what grows from this Kōrero Mai whanau escalation project, especially in terms to addressing equity for our tangata whenua. I truly believe that when all is said and done, that what we make good for Māori is ultimately good for all. Thank you.
Kia ora, Kaiwan. That's a beautiful image, the Pouhutakawa. Now it's my auntie, Mori Tata. Her husband was the first one to tell me the stories of tauranga moana. She's sick to death of them because her husband keeps telling the stories of tauranga moana, and she corrects them at times as well. So, kia ora whāia.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Mari Tata hau. Yes, I live in the Tamarāwaho, but I am actually from Tainui, so our house is often a bed of Tainui first, but I never win. Anyway, with the emphasis on ring the bell, I felt very privileged to speak with patients in the kaupapa ward at Tauranga Hospital, and so this talk is going to be all about from what the patients were saying. Just to let you know that my history, my background is accounting. I was an accountant, and so clinical studies are all very brand new. And so this was great to come into the hospital and do this. So what's not working here? Okay. Okay, so the questions that we asked were all given from the Kōrero Mai program, and it's if you're worried about about your health, what would you do to get help? And this was talking to the patients. So most of the patients in the hospital said, oh, we'd just wait for a nurse to come past. And they passed quite often. Nobody wanted to ring the bell. So I prompted them, would you ring the bell? And the answers were, I don't want to be a hoha. The nurses are really busy. there's other people in the ward that are sicker than me. And so that's real Māori, is take care of them and I'll wait. And so the next step was, so it was evident in the ward at that time that being a kaupapa ward, the understanding of tikanga and Māori processes were really relevant to all, both the staff and the patients. The whanau, they were in there, they were able to be with their loved one, and they felt comfortable, they felt like they were at home. And it was very evident that Māori, taking care of Māori works best among, the Māori nurses. That's that familiar understanding of each other and the understanding of tikanga. But noting that our Māori male are very staunch, and they needed to have their whānau there with them to help them through. Oh, where are we up to? Okay. No, it's not. The findings of interest. Yep, cool. So, however, it was noted that the nurses always went in and reiterated ring the bell, because on admission, some of the very sick patients, they did not gain a full comprehension of ward orientation, and ring the bell was really the least of their worries. So that was why they said they'd wait. Most patients are happy to ring the bell for a medical event, but one of the main things is they don't want to be a hoha to the nurses because the nurses are busy. The tāne, which is our men, they don't want to hoha the nurses at all. They'd rather tell them how pretty they are, or that's one of the patients ringing now. Something to say. Just want to add a bit. And the wahine have no hesitation when it comes to ringing the bell, so the women are really quick to get up there and say what they want. I don't feel in control here. And I'd much rather be presenting a financial report, but however. So, you're not a hoha, ring the bell, which is. So the ideas of that is like, well, you're not a hoha. Ring the bell if you need help, because the sooner you get help, the sooner you'll start to feel better. No, they don't agree with that either. So, it's keep the bell within reach. And there was a man that was in the ward who suggested that something be done with the bell, because he'd seen a karawa across the ward from him who had dropped his bell and it had gone under the bed and no one had seen it. So he had no way of saying, and he would just be lying there waiting. So this chap suggested if the bells had a retractable wire or something, that if it dropped, it just zipped back up into the stand right beside the bed. I thought, well, that's a good idea. And the other side of it is that whānau were always happy to ring the bell. They would come in, and that's what's wonderful about the kaupapa ward, is they were allowed there any time, day or night. They slept over with their whānau, and they were there to take care of them full time. And that has to be good for the nurses as well, to know that the patient's being taken care of. Okay, so we're on to... So many words were tossed around during the interviews, and words such as ring the bell, which we were really trying to say. And the other words is hoha. That was really their hoha. Whakamā, they were too shy to ring the bell and make a fuss about anything. And whānau, they wanted their whānau there all the time. Manaakitanga, whakawhanaungatanga in the ward, wairua, ātāhua, they loved the ward, they absolutely loved it. And the list goes on. So one of the cases from that was that Tony, a 35-year-old Māori with a heart condition, he was the first man that I actually got to interview, young chap. well educated. His whānau, I knew, they all well educated. And he felt that he couldn't ring the bell because he was only 35 and there were a lot of older people in the ward that needed the nurse more than he needed it. He couldn't get up and walk because of his condition, and if he wanted to go to the toilet or the wharepaku, he had to ring for help, and he didn't want to do that because the porters or the orderlies that come in and help them are much younger than him or older than him, and he didn't feel that they should be pushing him. And so really, you know, he was his own worst enemy, and he knew what he wanted, but he just didn't want to hoa anyone. He'd been brought up by his nan in Kōrero and immersed in the old ways of Māori, and so he truly had this respect for everyone else, and he really felt that he didn't put himself bottom of the pile, but he felt that everybody had to be taken care of, and then he would allow himself to be taken care of. However, his wife came in and, no, I will ring the bell. And she really got him going. And he was the one who said, you know, we need to have little cards, you know, just a smaller one like that. And I saw the card exactly what we would like, and we could adapt it for into Te Reo Māori, and that was Southern Cross. I really loved the card that they put up, and it had everything on it that Tony would love to have seen. So I'm not sure if I could ever remember you, but oh, great. Yeah, we'd love to be able to see that and perhaps take it back and adapt it. Okay, and so as a final case, it was, we had a queer of 74, and she had always been a great advocate of health and education her whole life. Now, her whānau were always there with her, and she had quite a high standing within Tauranga Moana. And they loved that kaupapa ward. They loved the fact that they were allowed to be there with their mother the whole time. And they had karakia and a kai every night, and this room would have been filled by their whānau who came. So the ward, of course, gave them the lounge room for that. They loved that, and they felt that you couldn't get much better than what the kaupapa ward had to offer. Ring the bell, of course they rang the bell, but they tried first to do everything for their mother. Moi mai rā e koe, she passed away on the 3rd of October. So those were just a couple of the patients I interviewed. I also observed other medical and allied staff and saw the great difference in style. Now, thank goodness I don't know any of you and what you do, because if I offend you, I apologise, but this is what I saw. The consultants, let's start at the top. They were far too busy. They were just moving along, doing their rounds. You know, what's the time? Got to move, got to move. They know so much. They could tell so much to the patients, and the patients are in awe of them. And so I just felt that maybe they could look at a way of passing the message a little better. You know, it just was too sharp, too quick. They were just gone. I also saw the other allied health, I don't know, phlebotomist, that's a new word, and I thought I got that well. She was lovely. She was lovely. Little old Pākehā lady came into the ward with all her tools and her needles, and she rubbed her arm to make sure it was warm and are you all right, and chatted away and took her time and got the blood that she wanted, and then she was off. But it was really nice to see. I went into a few of the other wards to have a look at just how things were. And I have to say that when everybody was in the kaupapa ward, they tried. They really tried to create a whanaungatanga atmosphere. In the other wards I observed 2 nurses who were talking about lunch while they were giving a patient their medication. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure if that's right. But hey, you know, it was nearly lunchtime. So finally, this is the staff on the Kaupapa ward. There are a few other nurses, but they're really wonderful. And the clinical lead nurse manager, a quote that she said to her nurses was, "If I catch you looking busy, look out. You are not more important than the patient." Thank you.
Kia ora whaia. So I just want you to notice time and relationship. There's themes that come through. Time and relationship are key. In terms of Te Ao Māori, in terms of our worldview, our hauora is determined by the quality of our relationships. So the stronger our relationships with people, with our place, and with our atua, then the healthier we're going to be. And so time and relationship are key. The other thing is, which always struck me from Whāia Māori's kōrero, is we're often aiming too high. We are not, when we think of health literacy, we want people to understand the terminology we use, the science we use, whereas actually we need to speak the language of the people coming in. Ring the bell sounds basic, but if they don't know how to ring the bell, don't feel empowered to ring the bell, not even at that level, then the rest is just far above and beyond what they're able to cope with. I'm now going to hand over to Marama and Arona, who are our second to last speakers. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora no tātou. My name is Arona Smith and I'm the team leader for Regional Mori Health Services in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. The fundamentals of the position that I hold is to support the navigators in terms of Te Paukokiri, our kaimahi, who deliver the services of Te Reo me ona tikana, the language and its protocols, ensuring that Māori don't leave their Māoriness in the car at admission and pick it up when they're discharged. The basic po that support the delivery of service are mana atua in terms of our spirituality, and we adhered to that when Tainui opened the conference. Mana tūpuna talks about whanau and ensuring that whanau are by their sides from admission to discharge. Mana whenua talks about the environment that they're in and ensuring that people are there so they're able to speak up. Kōrero Mai. Mana tangata is about the individual and the tapuness of that person that we're dealing with. And we started with Sir Maui Pōmare in his entirety of Māori-ness and how he navigated or opened the doors for us to deliver it today. I want to align those po to the kōrero that Marama delivered today. Now, in talking about Tai, and when Tai entered into the hospital, ensuring that Mori Health Services were part of that, and ensuring that we know this person has Māori, Māori-ness, Māori blood, Māori beliefs, and is a vital part of us delivering the services. Parallel. Mana Tipuna talks about Marama and the family. And we understand that he was from French ancestry as well. But taking on board that, not just another name or another number that enters into our services, taking in terms of the spirituality of those people that we're looking after, not just Tai, but the many dimensions that he comes from. Now, mana whenua is intrinsic in terms of where we're looking after the people. Is it the surgical ward? Is it ED? Is it ACU? And ensuring again that tangata whenua are there in terms of whānau being able to speak up. Kōrero Mai. What we think is good for our clients might not necessarily be okay for our whānau. Are we listening? Sometimes we're not. Now, mana tangata, again, talks about the individual, and we're talking about Tai. Now, we're talking about Tai in his whānau, and the ability for his whānau to have a voice. And it's about us ensuring that the delivery of the service is parallel. That tangata whenua have a voice. That we adhere to the partnership and protection and the Treaty of Waitangi. Otherwise, they're just words left in the books and the files and the policies that we all read now and then. Well, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to deliver part of that, our services in terms of regional Māori health services, from whakatāne te tauranga, no reira kia ora no tātou.
Okay, so this is a picture of me and Tai at the beach last summer after I cut him off on a wave as we were surfing together. He's still smiling at me though, so that's okay. Had to appease him with a nice lunch in a local restaurant. So just going back to Tai's story, just wanted to touch on some of the key themes for me that relate to the discussion that we've had today. So in terms of Tai's mana and his Mori, and also my mana, I guess, and my spiritual well-being at that time, throughout his stay there were periods and interfaces with health professionals that diminished that somehow, just by the body language or the tone of voice or the lack of respect that was portrayed in the communication style. And so that impacted for me his safety and his confidence in the health system in general. Also my intuition as a mother and my knowledge around my son's wairua and his Māori were dismissed by one doctor. At the time that I entered into the ED and leading up until we were in the paediatric ward, I didn't feel the need to identify that I was a healthcare professional, nor that I had 29 years behind me in ED nursing, because I was Tai's mum, and that's how I should have been treated, and equally I should have had best practice in both worlds from the get-go. The lack of knowledge and skill by one of my colleagues when he was engaging with us was evident in the way that he made judgments and assumptions, and potentially he had some biased beliefs. And I can tell you that him and I have met post that time to discuss what went on for him and what was some of the rationale for not examining Tai in the room properly, and for continuing to dismiss parental concerns and nurses, and we're working through it in Aroha. In terms of the system issues that were evident in that story, one surgical team on makes it very, very hard for people to be in two places at once. I think someone was saying that this morning over breakfast. But nevertheless, that leads to an opportunity where we can have a look at the system and the processes we've got in place, from what the on-call system is, into looking at the Māori journey from the front door to theatre and onwards, and having a look and diagnosing whether there is inequity in the processes that we have. But most importantly, I think it's understanding the pūrākau, or the stories of the Māori experience, is critical to the wider system, and it's a powerful way to recognise and understand and start to deal with the levels of racism that exist in health. It sets a scene for crucial conversations for patients and their whānau to truly be partners in care, because we're listening and seeing their experience through their eyes. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora koutou. The last word is going to go to our General Manager, Tricia Keelan, and then we will close with karakia and apologies in advance to the speaker following us for nibbling away at his time, or her time, his time. Mind you, don't even want to assume just because you have a beard, so kia ora.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Trisha Keelan tōku ingoa. He paku rawa taku kōrero I tēnei rā. I'm just saying my name and my kōrero will be very short. First, I just want to acknowledge the team here for what they've presented to you today. And I encourage you to seek out opportunities to wānanga, okay? So often in our lives, we aren't searching for what comes from inside us. We're searching for an answer we read and to make sure that we are we're able to reference kōrero from somebody else. The beauty of wānanga is to bring out the trueness of yourself and offer that to the world, okay? So my role as a General Manager of Māori Health Gain and Development, in my view, okay, and I take my my work very seriously, is to support the Crown to uphold te tiriti o Waitangi and Aotearoa in the health, from where I stand, the hauora realm. So, as I stand here today, I'm encouraging all of you to be heart-led in your work in the hauora system, to be visionary, to be more than you were yesterday, to contribute to an Aotearoa that's future-making and offers something more to the world, all right? Because you have indigenous wisdom in Aotearoa, we have it, okay? We want the best of what Ngai Pākehā have and the best of what Ngai Māori have, and then let's see what we can do, let's reimagine, all right, what our hauora system can be like. We're going through a health and disability system review at the moment, and this is an opportunity for us. Now you may be wondering, oh, this doesn't have to do with patient deterioration. It has everything. It has everything to do with patient deterioration. Our people deteriorate at a higher rate. They deteriorate quickly in hospital. And if any of you are wondering why still, after this kōrero that's been shared with you, if you're wondering why, go and talk to your general managers of Māori Health. Now, we've got 3,500 staff in my DHB and one of me, so don't expect me to be able to answer you straight away, okay? How many staff have you got in your DHB? The thing is, be patient, okay? But start to build relationships with your Māori Health teams in your DHBs and stop, okay? Everyone needs to stop doing this, accepting the Pākehā archetype for Aotearoa. It doesn't work for Māori, okay? You need to seek out what is going to work for Māori. And all of the presentations that have occurred here, just reflect on those. Did anyone else talk about how this is working for the treaty partner in Aotearoa? Reflect on that. When you go anywhere, when you're at work, does anyone talk about that? Okay? So I encourage you, we can be better than we are now. And if we work together, we can do something amazing. So koina taku kōrero atu kia koutou katoa, taku mihi nui ki wēnei maraikura, wēnei whatukura o te moana atoi. Tēnā koutou.
Anō rerehe karakia kapi. Ka tākina te kaua ko te kaua nui, ko te kaua roa, ko te kaua whakatiki āhua mai no tiki o te rangi. E tipu ko te pū, ko te weo, ko te rito, ko te take, ko te taurā, ko te tauira. Tēnei rā te awhi nuku te awhi rangi no te ororoa I o matua. I pū e te take uewe nuku uewe rangi. Tēnei ka hahau ki runga I te tipua, ki runga I te tawhito, ki runga I te kāhui o nā āriki. Kia puta nei tauira ki te whaiao ki te ao marama, uhi wero tau mai te Māori, haumi e hui e, tā iki e, kia ora tātou.